Welcome to Be Brilliant with Jing Lang, the podcast dedicated to those seeking to excel in every aspect of their lives. Through conversations with her guests, Jing will tease out personal stories, helpful tips, and proven strategies to help you elevate your life and reach your highest potential. Get ready to dive in and discover what it means to be truly brilliant. And now, here's your host, Jing Lang.
Amanda Hug is the 76th President and Chair of the Society of Actuaries. She is a director in WTW's insurance consulting and technology practice. Amanda enjoys adventure travel and has been lucky enough to swim on the edge of Victoria Falls, cross paths with the Big Five in South Africa, and hike the W Trek in Patagonia.
This is my dog, Barkley. Barkley, say hi.
So cute.
He takes a lot of my work calls with me. He's a good boy.
Does he interfere with a call?
He's pretty good. It's just like if my doorbell rings or the phone rings, then he'll go crazy. But otherwise, no, he just sits at my feet and sometimes wants to sit on my lap when I'm working.
He's very, very cute.
Thank you.
How are you, Amanda?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to see you again so soon after Impact, where you became the youngest SOA president.
Yes, it was honestly one of the most fun and special weeks of my life. So yeah, very exciting.
And I love that you wore pink. It is such a statement. I love, what was it? Legally Blonde. That was my first association of pink and serious professions. And I love that you did that, the SOA presidential speech.
Yeah, well, I thought like it's the year of Barbie and Taylor Swift, and both are strong women showing that femininity doesn't mean that you're not professional, right? And so I thought, why not lean into that?
I love it. And we both were red today. And we didn't even
Perfect.
talk
We
about
didn't
it
even
ahead of
plan it.
time. You just became the SOA youngest president. Was this a fun years in the making?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of yes and a little bit of no. And so I've always known that I love to lead. I wanted to lead on, a global scale if I could. And I think as women, we should not be apologetic about having goals and dreams like that. So yes, I think once I got involved in the SOA, I started through sections. I was vice chair of the leadership and development section. And I kind of learned, oh, there's a board and here's what they do and here's their role. I definitely thought, yeah, that could be something I would be interested in one day, being on the board, potentially running for president and chair, but maybe didn't think it would be this soon. So maybe that's the partial no.
Well, do tell us a story about what encouraged you to run for the SOA board.
So I had volunteered in local spaces. So I was president of the Actuaries Club of Hartford and Springfield and president of the Actuaries Club of Boston. Really enjoyed those roles, got involved with SOA sections, and was actually just having a casual conversation at the back then annual meeting in Toronto with Andy Rallis. And I told him, he was president at the time. And so I told him, hey, Andy, I'm thinking of running for the board in about maybe 10 years when I look a little bit more like the other board members. And Andy was so gracious and said to me, Amanda, don't wait, run now because your voice is unique now. If you wait 10, 15 years, you're going to look a lot more like everyone else and you're going to have a perspective a lot like everyone else versus now your perspective's different. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for diversity across many dimensions on the board. Age is just obviously one of them. But you being closer to your FSA, closer to the pains of studying for exams, closer to making a career decision, right? These are all things that our up and coming actuaries are facing. And so you can bring that perspective into the boardroom. And so, yeah, I ran in 2020 and was grateful to be elected. Just had a great 3 years on the board. I learned so much. What I like to say is being in the boardroom, that is the main space where I come in with a point of view, with a perspective. You have to read like an 150-page board book coming into the meeting. And then instantly people start talking and I'm like, hey, that's something I didn't think about. Or, hey, this affects our international members differently. And being someone who always works in the US, that wasn't top of mind for me. So my mind has definitely changed when I come into the boardroom. I think I also learned what president and chair actually does. I think there's a bit of a myth out there that president has all this power to change the direction of the SOA. You can shape it, but you're still one of 18 member board. You have one of 18 votes. But I learned how important the chair is for fostering an inclusive and forward moving, I guess, group of individuals and making people feel like their voices are heard. And so that's something I wanted to definitely do in my role as chair.
So what are some criteria for someone who is looking, maybe consider running for the board?
Yeah, well, I think what you want to do is look at what is the board looking for. So we publish a document every year that says kind of these are the skills that we're looking for, and put your experiences up against that. And maybe you don't have 10 years of leading a large group or leading an organization, but if you don't have any experience leading, maybe that's time to find an opportunity to lead a smaller group and to understand, okay, how do I bring together opposing opinions and how do I facilitate moving forward? And then I think the other thing I would say is, what is that unique perspective that you have? And so right now, in the last year, we actually had a reserve seat on the board for someone who had an experience outside of North America, because we said that's really important. And we're also thinking recently about our education system, and that's going to be a big focus of the strategic plan for the next couple of years. So if you've never volunteered with the SOA as it relates to education, maybe that's a way you could differentiate yourself from someone who hasn't done that before. So it's like applying for any job. What are the what are the job descriptions, and what are those stories and experiences you have that.
Got it. Thank you for that. And in terms of the changes you have made while you're a board member, one thing resonated strongly with me is the moving away from sections to communities. I understand starting 2025, all the sections will be merged. Can you tell us more about that? I know you're leading the charge on that initiative.
Yeah, well, I'm actually not really leading the charge anymore. So this shows how long changes take to come about in the SOA and in any large, complex organization. So I chaired the task force in, I don't even know, Jing, maybe 2019 back then, which was called the Community Engagement Strategy Working Group. And the purpose of bringing that working group together was to say, hey, we've had sections for a long time, like 20 plus years in the SOA, maybe 30, and they've served the organization well for a really long time. But what we were seeing was declining membership overall, and then especially declining enrollment from some of the younger generations. And so people weren't really seeing what is the value of this. And so we said, can we take a different approach? And one of the things about sections is they're very, I want to say, one-way communication, right? The section and the council is pushing out webcasts, articles, podcasts, great, good informative information, but there wasn't a lot of dialogue back from the members or between members. And so the idea of the evolution to communities is, can we promote more of that member to member connection? And we at one point had, I think, 22-ish sections, and now we're streamlining, I think, down to 7 or so communities. So the idea is just more simplicity, bringing more people into the same spaces. And yeah, it'll roll out next year, which that's 6 years in the making. So I'm glad that we did a pilot. We learned some stuff worked, some stuff didn't, but it's very much being run now by the SOA staff and the engagement team, who does a great job at the SOA of connecting with our members.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I'm really looking forward to the change as well. I just been elected council for entrepreneur innovation section, and I understand that one, along with the leadership and development, and I believe a few more sections, going to become career development community.
Great.
So I'm really excited about that.
Love it.
So tell us about, for someone who is looking to be a leader for a profession in the future, what are some skill sets they should start building today?
Yeah, so a piece of advice someone gave me years ago, which I thought was really interesting, was, how do you approach your personal life, and what kind of strengths can you bring from that into your career? And the example they gave at the time, which I am not, but they said, I love downhill skiing. What do I love about it? It's a rush. It's a little bit scary. You're going fast. You have a destination. It's thrilling. And so they said, I want to try and bring that energy into my job. And so for me, it is, I think, a skill that's really important to build is courage. And I try to do that in my personal life. And I love going on any good adventure that I can find. I think about one recently, a couple of years ago, is probably my most dangerous, is I went to Zambia and Zimbabwe to go to Victoria Falls. And they have this thing called Devil's Pool, which is where you swim at the top of Victoria Falls. and like literally put your arms over the edge while someone is holding your feet. And that is the only thing like keeping you from going over the waterfall. So when I did that, I was like, this might be a little bit more dangerous than I usually bargain for. But I do things like that because I believe when you get out of your comfort zone, it makes you stronger. It makes it a little bit easier for the next time. And so I've tried to bring that into my career and say, okay, what scares me? What do I feel like I'm not really ready to do? Well, let me try. Let me take a step in and do something. I remember back when I was thinking about this because of my speech recently. I remember my first time I presented at the annual meeting. It was in 2014 in Austin, Texas, and there was like maybe 100 people in the audience, a breakout session, and I was so nervous, right? And I was like, I've never spoken. This is such a large event. This is like the premier SOA event. There were questions I didn't know how to handle. But it's fine. I did it. And then I went on to present many, many times at SOA meetings. And then last week I was, on stage in front of 1,600 people. And I was definitely nervous. But also when I was up there, I was like, wow, I'm prepared. I've worked towards this. I didn't go from zero to this many people. And so I think that's just my advice is, can you build that courage in your career where you're stepping out of your comfort zone every single day, every single week, every single month, so that in a year you can look back and be like, hey, that thing that was really scary isn't scary anymore. And that, will propel you forward.
I love it. You definitely keep on pushing yourself. It's quite an inspiration to watch.
Thank you. It's fun.
Well, speaking of adventures, so talking about another adventure recently, tell us that story here.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing where when it's happening, you're like, I cannot believe this is happening. You can't make this stuff up. So I went to Uganda with my cousin to go gorilla trekking, which if you've never heard of that, it's where you hike into the woods on foot to find a family of gorillas and then you hang out with them. And it's definitely scary. In theory, you're supposed to stay like 30 feet from the gorillas, but if they come towards you, like there's nothing you can really do. And so it was very up close and personal with the gorillas, which was so fun. But one of the things that happened is my guide, Omax, noticed this SOA pullover I was wearing. And he said, Society of Actuaries, that's so cool. And I was like, that's unusual, but great. Glad you think we're cool. And my cousin asked him if he knew what actuaries do. And he said, yes, I do. And they're very intelligent. That's what we hear, Jing, right? So I didn't really think too much of it. But then he looked right at me and said, and because you're an actuary, I know I can trust you. And I almost was like at a loss for words, you know what I mean? And I just said, thank you so much. Like that means so much. Integrity is a big part of our profession, right? It's one of the values of the SOA. It's part of our code of conduct. And so just to hear that here I am in the middle of rural Uganda on a personal trip, gorilla trekking, and this guy knows what actuaries do and knows that we can be trusted. Yeah, it was just a really cool, proud, special moment, especially as I was about to step into the president and chair role.
Were you scared at any point?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. There was a point where, so the alpha males are called silverback gorillas. And there was a point where this like 350-pound silverback started walking straight towards me. It's like, oh my goodness. And you're not allowed to like turn around and run because that's going to make it more dangerous. You just have to stay there. And I had a guide on either side. And what they do is they kind of make gorilla noises so that the gorillas feel like, we're safe. We're part of your family. And then like 5 feet from me, he stopped and just like sat back and started eating leaves from a tree. So yeah, it is scary.
What's the protocol? Are you supposed to make eye contact when an alpha male stares right at you?
Probably not. Probably not. Yeah. The little baby gorillas would come over too, though. And it was just the cutest thing. One like kind of walked over and they're much smaller and probably could still hurt you, but it doesn't seem like as much. And one came over. They're very curious and like put his arm on the leg of the girl next to me. And we just like were frozen like statues.
That is scary. Oh my God. It's amazing that you put yourself in that situation.
Yeah, well, it's a commercial tourist activity, so apparently they think it's safe enough.
No fatality yet. That's good. Okay, well, you mentioned branding a bit. When people hear about Society of Actuaries, well, I would say maybe 9 out of 10 people don't really know what actuaries do. So it's amazing that your guide not only knows, but also recognizes the quality that we bring. What's your thought on personal branding for actuaries?
Yeah, I think branding is really important, and not because you're trying to sell yourself. I think branding is important because we have a million different voices, people, messages coming at us all day. And so if you want to make sure that your experience with someone is memorable, then you have to sort of crystallize, who am I in a nutshell? And it needs to be authentic. So there's no reason to have a brand that doesn't align to your values or who you are, because that's going to be exhausting trying to perpetuate that. So I think just figuring out, like, okay, what is your authentic self and what are those values that you have and the value that you bring, and how do you easily communicate that? So for me, I don't have a tagline or anything, but I would say my brand is sort of a combination of enthusiasm, adventure, and excellence. Like those are the things that I try and embody and things that are important to me that I would want someone to know.
If we are to repeat the exercise for the actual profession, what adjectives would you use?
Yeah, I would say excellence is one. That's one of our values. Integrity would be another one. And then I am hoping that we can make the brand cool. Like Omac said, I think we're on that journey to make it more attractive to young people.
Any suggestions how we can marching towards that goal?
Think it's just who are we being out publicly? So, at the end of the day, people become actuaries or other professions because someone in their life helps them, bring them towards that. And so it's very much, we have a great marketing team. We're spending a lot of money on marketing and doing a lot of cool things to reach people in places like Reddit or YouTube or Instagram. And that'll do some of it. But I also think, what actuaries do people know? And are they excited about their jobs? And do they talk about them? And do they encourage people to get into the profession? I think it's very much a grassroots effort. And so I think all of us need to be part of bringing people in.
I like it. And recently, opened a TikTok account, and that has
Nice,
been
nice.
quite a learning experience.
Yes, yes.
You routinely land yourself in a room with many other, most more senior than you. So how do you gain respect from people with a lot more experience?
I think the first thing is absolutely humility. You do not know it all. I don't know it all. And being willing to learn, being willing to hear other people's perspective, being willing to ask questions and be receptive to feedback are all things that I think really help, because you want to honor the fact that everyone else is bringing something different to the table. And those that are older than you are bringing more experience. That's just a fact. And so I very much do appreciate and rely on that when I'm in spaces, whether it be a WTW or in the boardroom. And then I think the other thing is just excellence. People want to work with people who meet their commitments, who meet their deadlines, who put in the work and are come to meetings prepared, lead with authority. And so really doing that preparation. So like one example is that the SOA was kind enough to sponsor me to do the National Association of Corporate Directors certification. And, they offered it. I didn't have to do it, but I said, this is going to be great. This is going to help me have a better understanding of how boards should function, good governance, bad governance. And it took time. I mean, 50, 100 hours maybe. I had to do the courses and then I had to study for the exam and pass the certification. But that shows like I'm committed to the job and I'm committed to doing it well. So I think excellence goes a long way, regardless of your age or what you're bringing to the team.
Let me ask you about your guess for how actuaries will look like in 10 years.
Yeah. So this is a top of mind because we just had our 75th anniversary at the SOA. Our roots go back further than that, but Society of Actuaries was founded in 1909. So thinking a lot about the past and the future, I think that we're going to continue to embody all of the things we've already been talking about, right? We have excellence as a profession and we've done so much historically. And I think we're just going to continue to build on that. So one thing that really stands out though as being really important in the next 10 years is actuarial judgment, and making sure that we continue to focus on that, especially in the advent of AI, right? And so I hear a lot about black box models. I hear a lot about model interpretability and understandability. And so I think us being there to guide the models, to help explain the models, to question, when appropriate, I think that'll only continue to grow and hopefully continue to increase, our value in the marketplace.
Well, speaking of AI, in your personal opinion, is it a friend or foe to our profession?
Yeah, definitely friend. I think technology is always going to be a good thing. We had spreadsheets, back in the day that came in and, we thought may revolutionize the profession, and it did in a way, but we still were extremely important as part of that. And so I think it can hopefully take away some of the work that people don't love doing when they're actuarial students and, they're just sort of running models and pushing buttons all day. So I hope that that'll eliminate some of that and let us focus on the higher value, more interesting work. Certainly things we need to be careful about. The SOA is participating in the AI Safety Institute Consortium, which is a gathering of 200 of the nation's leading AI stakeholders. And it was established by the Department of Commerce. And so we're participating in the conversation. How do we collectively do this well, use it for good? So yeah, I'm excited. I think, friend.
What's the most recent thing you have done with AI?
Well, I am a adventure and sort of travel junkie. I recently hit my 50th country visited. So I don't have as much time as I used to plan these trips. And so I've definitely been leveraging AI to help plan some trips. So on my Uganda trip, I had a 12-hour layover in Qatar. And so I was just like, what do you do for 12 hours in Qatar? And I ended up going on a desert safari, which is where you're kind of off-roading in a four-wheel drive vehicle, and then going sandboarding down like snowboarding on sand. So that was really fun.
Wow. Okay. Do you have more life insurance now? I feel like in your current position.
I know. I'm always a little worried about what questions they're going to ask me if I need to apply for more.
I suspect SOA is going to put a key person insurance on you, given your interest. Okay, so let's go to diversity, inclusion, and equity for a second. Is there any SOA initiative you can share with us?
Definitely. So the SOA has had in place the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We're also part of the joint Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee with the Casualty Actuary Society. And so the DEIC, the SOA version of it, has a couple initiatives. I was board liaison to them a couple years back, so got to sit with them for a year and chat with them about what they're thinking about. So a couple things they've done. One is the DEI toolkit. So this is published on the SOA website. Anyone can go out and find it. And it's just a digital resource that you can use to educate yourself on topics like adopting inclusive language, allyship, dealing with microaggressions, leading in an inclusive way. And so that's out there, and encourage people to check that out. We also recently launched the DEI Employer Spotlight, which is meant to give members a chance if they want to nominate their employers who are actively working to create positive change by advancing DE&I in the workplace. That's up there. At the Impact meeting, we had some DEI champions that were given awards for their work that they're doing in the space. So I'm excited about what's happening. We certainly still have work to do. We publish our data annually, a DEI report, again, also on the SOA website. And as an organization, our data for members who share, not everyone shares, but for members who share, we're seeing a gradual but steady increase in racial and ethnic diversity among our U.S. members and candidates. And so small step in the right direction, definitely still more work to do, but looking forward to promoting inclusion in the profession.
It's amazing. Well, Amanda, you do a lot, right? You have a demanding job. You have, now you're giving your role at SOA. You also managed to graduate top of your class when you're doing MBA and another master's in divinity. How do you think about time management versus priority management?
Yeah, I think about it differently now that I'm a consultant. It was very much about time management back when I worked at MassMutual. Loved my roles there, learned a lot, and felt like, wow, I was really busy and I had a lot on my plate. And then once I got into consulting, I realized this is a whole different ballgame. You're pulled in so many different directions because you have different client projects. You have intellectual property that you're trying to develop so that you're positioning yourself as a thought leader, for the next couple of years in whatever emerging topic is coming out. You need to continue to learn. For me, I need to continue to volunteer with the SOA. So for me, it's very much priority management. What is the most important thing this day, this week? And that changes constantly, but just trying to make sure, that I'm meeting those commitments as I said I would.
What are 2 to 3 areas of your life that is super important to you that you want to continue to focus on?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because if you've ever done Strengths Finders, one of my strengths is focus. Okay, so this is my specialty. I have a very narrow range of focus and I don't really do much outside that. So number one, My faith is a committed Christian. That's the most important thing in my life. Everything centers around that. And so I spend a lot of time volunteering at church. I volunteer with a parachurch ministry called Young Life in the city. I lead an adult small group in my home every week. So spend a lot of time with that. Love doing that. I think the second is being an actuary. Right now, especially, that is a huge focus for me. So looking forward to devoting a lot of time and energy into the SOA. And then the third would be adventure travel. So like I said, been to a lot of places. I will say I've been to every continent except Antarctica. So that's on the list, but I don't know that next year's probably not the year. So maybe in a couple of years.
Well, if I may ask a question about being a Christian, not all of members are religious. I consider myself an atheist as part of my upbringing, but I do believe that there is something bigger than me out there. I guess I'm more comfortable with the term universe as opposed to God. What are the things that you would still advocate for people without faith, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I think I would advocate is really asking yourself the question, where does my hope come from? What do I have hope in? And so for me, it's God. It's my relationship with God. And no matter what's happening in the world around me, like I know I have hope because of that. And so I think every person hopefully should be able to answer that question, right? Because life's hard. Things come at you, illness, tragedy, just the struggle of the daily working life, right? And at the end of the day, what are you putting your hope in such that if something goes wrong at work, if you lose your job, if, something happens with your family, you have that thing to fall back on. So that's my advice, is just like ask yourself that question, be able to answer that question so that you can kind of withstand the hardships that life will throw at you.
How do you differentiate hope and faith?
For me, they're very similar, but I think both of them have an element of being sure and certain of the things that you cannot see. So hope, there's not necessarily going to be tangible evidence out there that like God exists, he cares about my life. I'm going to spend eternity with him after I die. I have the Bible, right? But people have different views on the truth and the authenticity of the Bible. And so for me, it's whatever hope you have certainty, even though maybe it can't be 100%.
And faith is different?
They're similar. I would consider them similar.
Okay. All right. So what does success and fulfillment mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think success, we have the world's view of success. You get into an important leadership role and you're successful. At the end of the day, I still don't think that satisfies. I think about, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and I watched Miss Americana, which was her documentary a couple of years ago. And she wins album of the year, and she doesn't really have anyone around her to celebrate with. And she's kind of questioning, like, I work so hard for this, right? And that was really interesting to me because she's the pinnacle, right, of anything that you could hope to be, is to win that Grammy as a musician. And so I think for me, success is, am I honoring God with my life? And that's really the only thing it comes down to.
Any fantasy level goals you would love to achieve in your lifetime?
Fantasy level goals. So I feel like professionally, I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. So maybe if I were to think about an alternate universe, Amanda, I recently, a couple of years ago, did my first trip to Africa, South Africa, and went on safari, saw the Big Five, and was just so struck by being around the animals. And one of our guides was like, I don't watch TV. Being in the bush is my TV. And I was just thinking, how cool would it be this is your life, as you get to learn about the lion prides and the different interfighting that they have, and how they make a kill, and how they reproduce and stuff like that. So I feel like in another life, maybe something with animals. I also love dolphins, and so I always wanted to do something with dolphins.
That's amazing. The big five. Tell me, what are those?
Okay, let's see if I can do this. So it's elephant, lion, buffalo, leopard, and rhino. I was looking over. I'm an amateur photographer, and so I have a gallery wall of photos that I've taken in South Africa. And so I was like, okay, jog my memory here.
That's amazing. You have such a variety of interests and you pursue nearly all of them. That's really amazing. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
Any life mantra you want to share with us?
I necessarily have a life mantra. My life verse is John 10:10, which is, I've come that you may have life and have it to the full. And so I just try and do everything to the full and make the most of this life I've been given.
This is a really great place to stop. Amanda, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations again for your presidency. And I look forward to everything that is about to come.
Thank you so much. This has been great. Thanks, Jing.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Be Brilliant with Jing Lang. We hope you found valuable insights and motivation to fuel your journey. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And share this with 3 people in your life endeavoring to achieve personal greatness. Remember, brilliance is within you, and every step you take brings you closer to your best self. Keep striving, keep shining, and until next time, stay brilliant.